My name is Alistair Hodge, and can I welcome you to the first in a series of 6 webinars on the Transfer of Undertakings Protection of Employment Regulations 2006. In this first session, or the first half hour that we have together, I'm going to be providing a general introduction to the regulations and their operation, and also deal with the concept of a business transfer. Obviously, the remaining webinars will deal with other aspects of the regulations, and more on that a little bit later. Of course, the primary source of legislation that we'll be looking at during the course of the 6 webinars is, of course, the 2006 regulations. But a bit of a history lesson before we go any further. The 2006 regulations replaced the Transfer of Undertakings Protection of Employment Regulations 1981. And the original source for the 1981 regulations was in fact a piece of European legislation called the Acquired Rights Directive. And as most of you will know, in those old days when Europe put out a directive, member states had to implement the terms of that directive. And that is exactly what gave rise to the 1981 TUPE regulations. The Acquired Rights Directive itself, we don't need to refer to it too much during the course of the 6 webinars, but it's important that you are aware of it by way of background. Of course, in more recent times, we now live in the post-Brexit era, and the government did have the power and it did make representations that it would be changing or getting rid of some employment laws in the UK that had their foundations in European legislation. However, of course, the reality is that so far not much has happened on that front. And although the TUPE regulations do have their foundation in European law, there's certainly no indication from the government that they're going to be abolished in any way, shape or form. Hence why the 2006 regulations remain of great importance when it comes to the transfer of an undertaking. The regulations themselves obviously apply to public and private undertakings engaged in economic activities, whether, of course, they are operating for gain or not. And going alongside the regulations of 2006, you have a number of sets of ancillary regulations that govern individual situations. Those regulations, transfer of undertakings regulations relating to fishermen or sea merchants or things like that, they are far too numerous to be covered in our sessions together. And in the main, most of them only apply in limited specific situations tailored to particular professions. Where our focus is going to be over the course of the 6 webinars are the 2006 regulations themselves.